The stars had always seemed friendly to Park Tae-ho. For 63 years, humanity had walked among them as guests, then as neighbors, and finally as friends. At least, that was what Tae-ho believed. He had spent his entire career proving that humans could be trusted, that they were kind, that they meant no harm to anyone. Helix Station floated in the neutral zone between three major territories. It was a place of peace, a symbol of what the galaxy could become when species worked together. Tae-ho commanded this station with pride. Other admirals wanted warships and battle fleets. Tae-ho wanted handshakes and treaties. The galaxy called him the Gentle Hand, because he had solved 17 conflicts without ever firing a weapon. His daughter Sora served beside him. She was 29 years old. With her mother's smile and her father's stubborn hope, she worked as a cultural liaison officer, helping different species understand each other. Every morning, she brought Tae-ho tea, and they watched the stars together through the observation deck windows. "Do you think they will ever truly accept us?" Sora asked one morning. Tae-ho smiled at her. "They already do. Look around you. We have friends from 100 worlds on this station." Sora nodded, but something in her eyes showed doubt. She had heard the whispers. Some species thought humans were too soft, too eager to please, too weak to be taken seriously. That was the day the Valkyrie arrived. 300 of them came in damaged ships, begging for help. Their leader was a tall female named Rin. She had scars on her face and desperation in her voice. She told Tae-ho that civil war had destroyed their colony. They had nowhere else to go. Tae-ho did not hesitate. He opened the station's doors and welcomed them inside. He gave them food, medicine, and warm beds. The Galactic Concord sent messages praising his compassion. Other species watched and whispered that humans were fools. But Tae-ho did not care what they whispered. He cared about doing what was right. For 52 days, the Valkyrie lived on Helix Station. They ate human food. They learned human songs. The children played with Sora, who taught them games from Earth. Rin smiled and thanked Tae-ho every day for his kindness. On the 52nd night, Tae-ho organized a celebration, a festival of friendship between humans and Valkyrie. The station was decorated with lights. Music played in every corridor. Humans and Valkyrie danced together, laughed together, and shared stories. Tae-ho stood on the main platform and raised his glass. "Tonight, we celebrate what the galaxy can become. Not enemies, not strangers, but family." The crowd cheered. Sora stood beside him, clapping and smiling. Then the lights went out. For 3 seconds, there was only darkness and confusion. Then the screaming began. The Valkyrie were not refugees. They had never been refugees. They were shock troops. Elite soldiers trained for exactly this kind of mission. Their damaged ships were a lie. Their desperation was an act. Everything had been planned from the beginning. Rin moved through the darkness like a ghost. Her blade found human throats with terrible precision. Her soldiers did the same. They knew exactly where every human was. They had spent 52 days mapping the station, learning patrol routes, counting guards. Tae-ho grabbed Sora and ran. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flickered red. Bodies lay everywhere. His officers, his friends, his crew, all of them falling one by one. "Father!" Sora pulled him toward an escape pod. "We have to go." But the Valkyrie were faster. 3 of them blocked the corridor. Tae-ho pushed Sora behind him and raised his hands. "Please," he said. "Whatever you want. We can talk about this." The soldiers laughed. One of them stepped forward and drove a blade through Sora's chest. Time stopped. Tae-ho caught his daughter as she fell. Her blood was warm on his hands. She looked up at him with confusion in her eyes, like a child who did not understand why she was being punished. "Why, Father?" she whispered. "We helped them." She died in his arms. The Valkyrie soldiers did not kill Tae-ho. They had orders to leave one officer alive, a witness, someone to tell the story. Rin walked up to him and looked down at Sora's body. "Your kindness made this easy," she said. "Thank you for that." She turned and walked away, leaving Tae-ho alone with his daughter. The massacre lasted 11 minutes. 4,000 humans died. Teachers, doctors, engineers, children, everyone who had believed in peace, everyone who had trusted the Valkyrie, everyone who had smiled and offered help to strangers. When it was over, Rin broadcast a message to the galaxy. She stood on the observation deck, surrounded by human bodies, and smiled into the camera. "Let this be a lesson," she said. "Humanity is weak. Their kindness is their weakness. Any species that wishes to expand, now is the time. The humans will not fight back. They do not know how." The broadcast spread across every human colony. Billions of people watched in horror. They saw their friends, their families, their children lying dead on cold metal floors. They saw Rin smile. They heard her words. And they saw Admiral Park Tae-ho, the gentle hand, kneeling in a pool of blood, holding his daughter's body, weeping without sound. The galaxy watched and waited. Some species felt pity. Some felt satisfaction. Some felt fear, not of humanity, but of what this meant for them. If the Valkyrie could do this to humans, they could do it to anyone. But most of the galaxy simply shrugged. Humans were soft. Everyone knew that. This was bound to happen eventually. Perhaps now they would learn their place. On Earth, people gathered in the streets. They did not riot. They did not scream. They stood in silence, millions upon millions of them, watching the broadcast play on giant screens. Children held their parents' hands. Old veterans who remembered the last Earth War stood with tears on their cheeks. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence lasted for hours, then days, then weeks. Earth went dark. No ship left the planet. No message answered the countless calls from the Galactic Concorde. The defense grid activated, blocking all entry. The galaxy thought humanity was broken, defeated, finished. They were wrong. In a bunker deep beneath the Earth's surface, President Yoon Hana sat at a long table. Around her were the most powerful leaders of human civilization: admirals, generals, scientists, and politicians. On the screen before them played the image of Tae-ho holding his daughter. "They think we are weak," President Yoon said quietly. "They think our kindness means we cannot fight." She looked around the table at faces filled with grief and rage. They are about to learn the truth. 3 weeks passed without a word from Earth. The Galactic Concorde sent 17 delegations. Each one was turned away at the edge of human space. The defense grid was impenetrable, a wall of satellites and weapons that could destroy entire fleets. No one had ever seen it fully activated before. Most species had forgotten it even existed. The Valkyrie celebrated their victory. Commander Rin returned home as a hero. Crowds cheered her name in the streets. The government gave her medals and land and promised her a seat on the High Council. She had done what no one else could do. She had broken humanity. Other species began to circle like predators around wounded prey. The human colonies were rich and undefended. Now was the time to take what they wanted. Trade agreements were forgotten. Old borders were crossed. Everyone assumed humanity would not fight back. In the halls of the Galactic Concorde, diplomats whispered and smiled. The Security Bureau congratulated themselves on a successful operation. Humanity had been growing too influential, too powerful, too beloved by the smaller species who saw them as protectors. Something had to be done. The Valkyrie were useful tools, brutal enough to do the dirty work, stupid enough to take the blame. None of them noticed the silence from Earth. Or rather, they noticed but misunderstood. They thought it was the silence of defeat, the silence of a broken people. They were wrong. It was the silence before the storm, deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in a bunker that did not exist on any map. The United Terran Council met in secret. The room was cold and gray. There were no windows. The only light came from screens showing data, reports, and the same image that haunted every human alive: Admiral Tae-ho, holding his daughter's body. Fleet Admiral Kang Min-ho stood before the council. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and steady hands. He had spent his career preparing for a day he hoped would never come. "We have completed our investigation," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with anger. The Valkyrie attack was not random. It was not revenge. It was ordered. He pressed a button, and new images appeared on the screens. Documents, communications, secret recordings. The Galactic Concord Security Bureau planned this massacre. They have been planning it for 12 years. They contacted the Valkyrie government and offered them territory in exchange for eliminating human influence in the neutral zones. Silence filled the room. The council members stared at the evidence. Some had suspected. None had wanted to believe. We were targeted because we were kind, Minho continued. Because we helped species that the conquered wanted to control. Because we offered protection to the weak. The Bureau decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to continue. President Yoon Hana listened to every word. She was 64 years old, a small woman with white hair and gentle eyes. She had been a poet before she was a politician. She had ended Earth's last internal war through words, not weapons. Her grandson had been on Helix Station. He was 7 years old. He died holding his mother's hand. When Minho finished, the room waited for her to speak. She stood slowly. Her joints ached. She felt every one of her 64 years, but her voice was steady. For 63 years, we smiled at the galaxy. We believed that if we were good enough, kind enough, helpful enough, they would accept us. We compromised when we should have stood firm. We forgave when we should have remembered. We trusted when we should have prepared. She reached up and removed the peace medallion from her neck. It was made of silver, shaped like two hands clasped together. She had worn it every day since she became president. It symbolized everything she believed in. She set it on the table with a soft click. No more civility. The words hung in the air like thunder. They want to see what humanity becomes when we stop being kind. They want to know what we are capable of when we have nothing left to lose. She looked around the table at faces filled with grief and determination. Then let us show them. Admiral Minho stepped forward. We have protocols for this situation. Operations that have been prepared but never activated. Weapons that we swore we would never use. If you give the order, President, we can begin within hours. What are you proposing? Operation Black Dawn. Total military response. We open Facility Omega. We wake the sleepers. We activate the judgment protocol. Some council members looked uncomfortable. They knew what Facility Omega contained. They had voted to seal it decades ago, hoping it would never be needed. The sleepers have been in cryogenic suspension for 37 years, another admiral said. We do not even know if they will still function. They will function, Minho replied. They were designed to wait. They were designed to wake up when humanity needed them most. President Yoon was silent for a long moment. She thought about her grandson. His smile, the way he laughed when she told him stories, the way he asked if there were bad people in space, and she had told him no. The galaxy was full of friends. She had lied to him, and now he was dead. Bring Admiral Tejo here, she said. He will lead our response. Admiral Tejo is not in good condition, Minho said carefully. He has not spoken since the massacre. Bring him anyway. He deserves to be part of this. 3 days later, Park Tejo stood before the council. He was thin and pale. His eyes were empty. He had not eaten or slept properly since Sora died. He looked like a ghost wearing a uniform. President Yoon walked up to him and took his hands. They took your daughter, she said softly. They took my grandson. They took 4,000 of our people while they smiled and laughed and called us weak. Tejo said nothing. His hands trembled slightly. I am giving you command of all human military forces, she continued. Not because you are the best tactician, not because you are the strongest warrior, but because you know exactly what kindness cost us, and you will make them understand what happens when that kindness ends. Something flickered in Tejo's empty eyes. A spark, a flame. What are my orders? He asked. His voice was rough from weeks of silence. President Yoon stepped back and addressed the entire council. The galaxy believes we are broken, finished. They think our kindness made us weak. They think we will bow our heads and accept this massacre. She took a deep breath. Operation Black Dawn is authorized. Wake the sleepers. Open Facility Omega. Build the fleet we swore we would never need. She turned to Tejo. Show them what happens when humanity stops smiling. Tejo straightened his uniform. For the first time in 3 weeks, his eyes focused. The grief was still there. The pain was still there. But beneath them, something new burned, something cold and terrible and patient. With pleasure, President. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had confused kindness with weakness. They had forgotten that humans had fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. They had forgotten what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. They were about to remember. The moon had a secret. For over a century, humanity had built colonies on Luna's surface. Cities of glass and steel where millions lived and worked under artificial skies. The galaxy knew about these cities. They had visited them, traded with them, studied them, but they did not know about what lay beneath. Facility Omega was buried 3 kilometers under the lunar surface. It had no official name, no records, no existence. Only a handful of humans knew it was real. It was humanity's insurance policy, a weapon built in the shadows, designed for a day that everyone prayed would never come. That day had come. Supreme Commander Park Tae-ho walked through corridors that had been sealed for decades. The air was cold and stale. Emergency lights flickered to life as he passed. Sensors recognizing his presence after years of darkness. Beside him walked Dr. Bae Eun-ji, the facility's chief engineer. She was 53 years old. With tired eyes and steady hands, she had spent her entire career maintaining systems that she hoped would never be used. "This way, Commander," she said, leading him deeper into the facility. They passed through massive doors that opened with groans of old machinery. Each room they entered was larger than the last. Each one contained weapons that made Taeho's blood run cold. "Void lances," Eun-ji explained, pointing to a row of massive devices. "They tear holes in the fabric of space itself. Anything caught in the tear simply stops existing. Not destroyed, not vaporized, just gone." Taeho stared at the weapons. They looked almost beautiful in the dim light. "How many do we have?" 247. Enough to destroy a fleet in minutes. They moved to another section. Here, the walls were lined with containers no larger than human fists. Millions of them, stacked from floor to ceiling. "Echo swarms," Eun-ji said. "Self-replicating nanite clouds. Once released, they consume all matter they encounter and use it to make more of themselves. We designed them to eat starships. They can reduce a dreadnought to dust in less than an hour. Can they be stopped? Only by us. They respond to a specific frequency. Without it, they eat until there is nothing left to eat." Taeho nodded slowly. He understood now why this facility had been sealed. These were not weapons of war. They were weapons of extinction. "Show me the sleepers," he said. They descended further, past laboratories and storage rooms and sealed vaults. Finally, they reached the deepest level of the facility. Here, the temperature dropped even lower. Frost covered the walls. The air itself seemed to freeze. The room was enormous. Rows upon rows of metal pods stretched into the darkness, each one containing a single human figure. 12,000 pods. 12,000 soldiers. "The sleeper program began 80 years ago," Eun-ji explained. "After we joined the Galactic Concord, some people worried that we were trusting too easily. They proposed a backup plan, a force that would wait in the shadows until needed." She walked up to one of the pods and wiped frost from its surface. Inside, a young man slept peacefully. These soldiers were volunteers, the best of the best. They agreed to genetic enhancement, combat training, and then cryogenic suspension. Some of them have been asleep for nearly 40 years. Will they still be able to fight? They were designed for exactly this. Their bodies are stronger, faster, more resilient than normal humans. Their minds are sharper. Each one of them is worth 100 regular soldiers. Taeho looked at the sleeping faces. Young men and women who had given up their lives, their families, their futures, all for a moment that might never come. Now that moment was here. "Wake them," he said. Eun-ji nodded and walked to a control panel. She entered a series of codes, then pressed her hand against a scanner. Lights flickered, machines hummed. Across the room, the pods began to glow. The first pod opened with a hiss of released pressure. A man sat up slowly, blinking against the light. He was tall and muscular, with short black hair and calm eyes. According to his file, his name was Oh Jiho. He had been a captain when he went to sleep. "How long?" Jiho asked. His voice was rough from decades of silence. 37 years. Unji replied. Jiho processed this information without visible emotion. 37 years. Everyone he had known was either old or dead. The world he remembered no longer existed. Why now? He asked. Taeho stepped forward. Jiho looked at him and saw the uniform of a supreme commander. He saw the grief carved into the older man's face. He saw the cold fire burning in his eyes. They killed our children, Taeho said. 4,000 of them. On a station we built for peace. They killed them while we smiled and offered them bread. Around them, more pods were opening. Soldiers sat up, stretching muscles that had not moved in decades. They listened to Taeho's words, and their faces hardened. Who? Jiho asked. The Velkari. But they were only the weapon. The Galactic Concord ordered the massacre. They wanted to break us, to prove that humanity was too soft to survive. Jiho stood up from his pod. He was nearly 2 meters tall, and his enhanced muscles moved with perfect precision. He looked at his fellow sleepers, now emerging by the hundreds. I remember what they told us when we volunteered, he said slowly. They said we were humanity's last hope, that if the galaxy ever betrayed us, we would be the ones to make them regret it. He turned to Taeho. Is that why you woke us? To make them regret it? Taeho nodded. The galaxy thinks we are weak. They think our kindness means we cannot fight. I need you to show them how wrong they are. Jiho was silent for a moment. He thought about his mother, who had cried when he entered the cryogenic pod. She was certainly dead by now. Everyone he loved was gone, erased by time while he slept, but he still remembered why he had volunteered. He remembered the stories of humanity's wars, the terrible things humans had done to each other before they learned peace. He remembered thinking that if anyone ever threatened his people, he wanted to be the one standing in the way. The galaxy forgot what humans are capable of, Jiho said. They forgot because we chose to be kind. We chose to smile instead of conquer. We chose peace instead of war. He looked at the thousands of soldiers now standing at attention around them. They forgot that it was a choice, that we could unmake it at any moment. He turned back to Taeho and saluted. Where do you need us, Commander? Taeho felt something stir in his chest. It was not hope. Hope had died with Sora. But it was something close. Determination. Perhaps. Purpose. Everywhere, he said. I need you everywhere. We are building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. We are going to remind them why humanity chose kindness in the first place. Because the alternative was too terrible, Jiho finished. Exactly. Around them, 12,000 soldiers stood ready. They had given up decades of their lives for this moment. They were humanity's hidden strength, its secret weapon, its last resort, and they were very, very angry. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The Velkari homeworld was celebrating. 1 year had passed since the massacre at Helix Station. The anniversary was declared a national holiday. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags and singing songs of victory. Commander Rin stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, accepting the cheers of millions. She had become the most famous Velkari in history. Statues of her stood in every major city. Children learned her name in schools. Politicians spoke of the Rin doctrine. Strike first, strike hard, show no mercy to the weak. Far above the planet, the Velkari fleet patrolled in lazy circles. 300 warships, the largest military force in 3 sectors. They had nothing to fear. Humanity had gone silent. The human colonies were slowly being divided among the Velkari and their allies. Everything was going according to plan. Then the sky tore open. It started as a small distortion, a ripple in space that the sensors barely noticed. Then it grew, and grew, and grew. A hole in reality itself, a wound in the universe that pulsed with terrible energy. 1,000 human warships emerged from the fold. They came in perfect formation, moving with a precision that made the Velkari admirals gasp. At the center of the fleet was a ship unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that seemed to absorb light itself. Its name was painted on the hull in letters that glowed like fire. TSS Vengeance. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Supreme Commander Park Taeho stood before a wall of screens. Around him, officers worked in focused silence. Captain Ojiho commanded the sleeper forces from a secondary console. Dr. Bei-unji monitored the weapon systems. "Open a channel," Teho said. "All frequencies. I want every being in this system to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Teho's voice echoed across the Velkari homeworld. Broadcast from every speaker, every screen, every device capable of receiving a signal. For 63 years, humanity asked only to be friends. We shared our medicine, our art, our food, our dreams. When you were hungry, we fed you. When you were sick, we healed you. When you were afraid, we stood beside you and told you that you were not alone. On her balcony, Rin froze. The celebrations stopped. Millions of Velkari looked up at the sky, where human ships now blocked out the stars. You answered our kindness with slaughter. You killed 4,000 souls who did nothing but offer help. Children who had never held a weapon. Teachers who had never raised a hand in anger. Healers who had sworn to protect all life. Teho's voice grew harder, colder. My daughter died in my arms that day. Her last words were a question. "Why, Father?" "We helped them." He paused, and the silence was terrible. The Galactic Concord calls us soft, naive, weak. They say our kindness proves we cannot survive in a harsh universe. They believe we are prey to be hunted, slaves to be conquered, children to be taught their place. His eyes found the Velkari homeworld on his tactical display. Today, you learn why we chose to be soft, why we chose kindness over conquest, mercy over vengeance, peace over war. It was never because we could not be cruel. It was never because we lacked the strength to destroy. It was because we remembered what we were capable of. The Velkari fleet scrambled to respond. 300 ships against 1,000. They were outmatched, but they were proud. They would fight. They never had a chance. The battle lasted 6 hours. Later, historians would struggle to describe what happened. The word battle seemed wrong. Battles involved two sides fighting. This was something else entirely. The Void Lances fired first. Beams of pure nothingness cut through Velkari warships like sunlight through mist. Ships simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded. Gone, erased from existence as if they had never been built. Then came the echo swarms. Clouds of silver dust that descended on the remaining ships and consumed them from the inside out. Velkari crews screamed as their vessels dissolved around them. Metal became dust. Systems failed. Life support vanished. The Judgment Protocol coordinated everything with inhuman precision. It predicted enemy movements before they happened. Directing human ships with perfect efficiency, Velkari commanders gave orders that were countered before they could be executed. Captain Jiho led the sleeper forces in boarding actions against key targets. Enhanced soldiers moved through Velkari ships like ghosts. Impossibly fast, impossibly strong, they captured admirals and commanders, taking them alive as ordered. By the 6th hour, the Velkari fleet had ceased to exist. Not defeated, not retreated, erased. On her balcony, Rin watched her world's defenses crumble. She saw the human ships descend toward the surface, saw pillars of light strike military installations across the planet. Every base, every shipyard, every weapons factory vanished in controlled bursts of devastating energy. But the cities were untouched. Civilians ran through the streets in terror, but nothing harmed them. The humans were not here for genocide. They were here for something else. Sleeper soldiers found Rin within minutes. She tried to fight, but against enhanced humans she was helpless. They brought her to the vengeance in chains, dragging her through corridors lined with silent human officers. The bridge doors opened, and she saw him. Park Tae-ho stood exactly where he had been for the entire battle. His face was calm. His eyes were empty. He looked at Rin the same way he might look at an insect. "Do you remember me?" he asked. Rin said nothing. Her bravado was gone. She had seen what humanity could do when it stopped being kind. "You stood over my daughter's body and thanked me for making your job easy," Tae-ho continued. "You smiled while my people bled." He stepped closer. "I am not going to kill you." Rin looked up, confused. I am not going to torture you. I am not going to take your eyes or your hands or your tongue. Those would be acts of revenge, and revenge is small, personal, forgettable. He leaned down until his face was centimeters from hers. I am going to let you live. You will watch what happens next. You will see your military reduced to nothing. You will see your allies abandon you. You will see the galaxy learn the truth about what the Concord did, and every day for the rest of your life, you will wake up knowing that you caused this. You will be a living reminder of what happens when you mistake human kindness for human weakness. He straightened and turned away. Take her to the observation deck. Let her watch. On the surface below, the destruction of Valkyrie military power continued. No civilians were harmed. No homes were burned. No innocents suffered. Humanity had not come for blood. They had come for justice, and they had come to deliver a message. The gentle hand had become a fist, but even as a fist, it chose its targets carefully. It struck with precision and purpose. It destroyed only what needed to be destroyed, because even in their rage, even in their grief, even in their terrible fury, humans remembered who they wanted to be. They just made sure the galaxy would never forget what they could become. The Galactic Concord Security Bureau tried to fight back with words. In the days following the destruction of the Valkyrie military, they broadcast message after message to every species in the galaxy. They called the human attack unprovoked aggression. They demanded sanctions and blockades. They called for a united front against the human threat. No one answered. Instead, something strange began to happen. One by one, species across the galaxy released their own files, their own records, their own evidence. The Security Bureau had not only targeted humanity, they had manipulated conflicts between dozens of species. They had engineered wars to keep certain governments weak. They had assassinated leaders who spoke of unity. They had created enemies where none existed. Humanity was simply the first victim to survive and fight back. Within weeks, the evidence became overwhelming. Thousands of documents, millions of communications, decades of conspiracy laid bare for the galaxy to see. The Security Bureau had not been protecting peace. They had been protecting their own power. Species that had feared humanity now looked at them differently. The humans had been betrayed, massacred, and left for dead. They had risen with terrible fury, and yet, when they could have destroyed the Valkyrie completely, they had stopped. They had targeted only military installations. They had spared every civilian. This was not the behavior of conquerors. This was the behavior of protectors who had been pushed too far. 1 year after the fall of the Valkyrie, President Yoon Hana addressed the galaxy from Earth's new orbital command center. It was a massive station, built in orbit above the planet that had given birth to humanity. Behind her stood Supreme Commander Park Tae-ho, Captain Oh Ji-ho, and representatives from 37 species who had formally requested human protection. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. Billions of beings watched in silence. We did not want this, President Yoon began. Her voice was soft but clear. We never wanted this. Humanity dreamed of a galaxy where kindness was repaid with kindness, where friendship meant something real, where children could grow up without fear of the darkness between the stars. She paused, and her eyes glistened. That dream was murdered on Helix Station. 4,000 of our people died believing in that dream. They died smiling at strangers, sharing food with refugees, celebrating friendship with beings they thought were allies. My grandson died holding his mother's hand, asking why the nice aliens were hurting everyone. I have no answer for him. I never will. The president straightened her shoulders. So here is our new promise to the galaxy. Humanity will not start wars. We will not conquer planets. We will not oppress those weaker than ourselves. We will continue to offer friendship to anyone who extends their hand in peace. Her voice hardened. But if you harm the innocent, any innocent, human or not, we will find you. We will not look away. We will not make excuses. We will not give you a second chance to hurt more people. You will learn what our kindness always meant. That we could have been cruel. That we could have been conquerors. That we could have burned the galaxy to ash and built an empire on the bones of everyone who opposed us. Instead, we chose peace. We chose kindness. We chose to be the friends that the galaxy needed. That choice was never weakness. And now you will never forget it. The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. Within 3 months, the Galactic Concord dissolved. No one fought to save it. No one mourned its passing. It had been built on lies and maintained through fear. And now, everyone knew it. In its place rose the Terran Accords, a new alliance built on simple principles. No species would be forced to join. No species would be threatened or manipulated. Those who wanted protection could ask for it. Those who wanted friendship could offer it. But there would be consequences for cruelty. There would be judgment for those who harmed the innocent. And humanity would be the ones delivering that judgment. Supreme Commander Tejo served for 3 more years, rebuilding human military forces and establishing defense networks to protect allied species. He never smiled again. The man who had been called the Gentle Hand was gone, replaced by something harder and colder. When his duty was done, he retired to a small village on the coast of Korea. He built a house near the sea, where the sound of waves reminded him of Helix Station's observation deck. He planted a garden in memory of his daughter, filling it with the flowers she had loved. Sometimes, visitors came, alien children who had heard stories of the human commander. They came with questions in their eyes and fear in their hearts, wondering what kind of monster could destroy an entire fleet without mercy. They found an old man tending flowers. Tejo welcomed them into his garden. He served them tea and told them stories. Not stories of war, but stories of his daughter, stories of her kindness, her laughter, her belief that the galaxy could be a family if everyone just tried hard enough. She believed in you, he would tell the young ones. All of you. Every species. Every world. Every child. She believed that if we were kind enough, long enough, eventually everyone would learn to be kind in return. The children would listen, their eyes wide. Was she wrong? They would ask. Tejo would smile then, the first smile since the massacre. No, she was right. Kindness is the answer. Kindness is always the answer. He would look out at the sea, his eyes distant, but kindness without strength is just an invitation to be hurt. You must be kind because you choose to be kind, not because you cannot be anything else. You must have the power to be cruel and choose mercy instead. Otherwise, your kindness means nothing. He would turn back to the children and touch their heads gently. Remember that, little ones. Be kind. Be gentle. Be patient. But never forget that you have teeth. Never forget that you can bite. Because someday, someone will test you, and on that day, you must show them why you chose peace. The children would nod seriously, not fully understanding but remembering his words. Years passed. Decades passed. The Terran Accords grew stronger. Species that had feared each other learned to cooperate. Trade flourished. Art flourished. Children grew up on 100 worlds, learning that the galaxy was not a cruel place after all. And on a small planet called Earth, in a garden by the sea, an old man watched the stars and remembered his daughter's last question. Why, father? We helped them. Because we had to, Sora. He whispered to the night. Because someone had to show them what kindness looks like. And because we had to show them what happens when that kindness is betrayed. He closed his eyes. They will never forget. I made sure of that. Above him, the stars glittered peacefully. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled trade routes and protected colonies and stood watch against the darkness. And the galaxy remembered. Humanity had smiled for 63 years. Then they had stopped smiling, and the universe had shaken. Now they were smiling again. But no one would ever mistake that smile for weakness. Not anymore. Not ever again.